Hey guys, welcome to another essential tutorial. So today we're going to be using Omniverse and we're going to be using TyFlow and 3ds Max. So I just have this simple mesh model set up here, which I'm going to be exporting into the USD format, which is what Nvidia Omniverse uses. And I'm just going to be leaving all the settings the same here. Just make sure you have material enabled and the Y-up position, as that's the format that 3ds Max uses. So after this is exported here, I'm going to go ahead and open up Omniverse Create, and that's where we're going to be setting up our scene. Okay, now that we're in Omniverse, let's go ahead and find the USD file that we just exported. All you need to do is just simply drag it into your scene, and it's going to bring in everything that you exported. I went ahead here and just added a disk light, and I just switched the RTX renderer from real time to path traced, just because it makes the lighting look a lot better. And here's what I did for the disk light. I just dragged into the scene. It's pretty easy to get some quick lighting. The point of the tutorial today is really just to show you guys how to bring in a TyFlow simulation so that you can get it rendering nicely in real time. So jumping back into 3ds Max here, this is a quick TyFlow scene that I built. It's just using a model of an Airbus, and it's just using face edge fractures and an effector that causes it to animate on. You can use any kind of TyFlow scene, it doesn't really matter, but what I'm using is an export function in order to export every object that was fractured into its own individual object. So from there, then we're going to be exporting all of those objects as an FBX file. So you can see here, I'm just going to disable the original TyFlow, and then I'm going to go ahead and select all of those TyFlow nodes that we just exported. Once those are selected, then I'm just going to go to export, export selected, and let's export it as an FBX file. Once that's saved out here, we're going to jump back into Omniverse, and I'll show you guys how to use it. So back in Omniverse here, right click on the FBX file you just exported and click Convert to USD. I just left all the settings the same, but this is going to now import the animation. Find that USD file I just generated, and again, just drag it into the scene as we did before. Now you're going to see that the animation has imported. It's not going to play it entirely, as you have to set the end and begin time to match the scene that you exported. So in my case, it started at frame 40 and finished at frame 320. So now if you just change those parameters, you're going to see that once I hit play, it will now play the complete animation. Cool, so that looks pretty good. You're going to notice that the materials here aren't properly matching. We're going to have to either change the targets of the map files that were used. In this case, though, I'm going to create a new material and just override the original, and then just set up the diffuse map to match the one I used originally. So here's the material that was used originally. Let's just drag on a new one. And in order to get that to display, let's change it to stronger than descendants. That way it'll overwrite all of the child materials. And I'm just going to tweak a few parameters here. Now I'm just going to switch the diffuse channel to match the original model that was used in 3ds Max. So all you need to do is change the albedo map to that diffuse color. And there you go. Now you can see it's working as expected. So it looks pretty good. I'm just going to tweak the position of the disk light here just to try and make it look a little bit better. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm going to show you guys how to export this into an image sequence so that you can render it out. Okay, so jumping into the post-processing stuff, First, under path tracing, I'm just going to increase the max bounces to 10 just to improve the lighting. And here under my samples, it's going to be 1/64, which I think is pretty good for initial. And then here's chromatic aberration. It just helps tweak the RGB channels, just add a bit of the real kind of fringe effects that you can get from a real camera. And that's it. Enabled motion blur. Let's enable the keyframer. I'm going to show you guys how to animate your camera real quick here. So under the extensions tab, enable keyframer. I'm going to drag it into another tab here. Hit my camera that you want to animate. And all you need to do is add a keyframe. So under the keyframe tab, I'm going to click add keyframe for my first initial position, scrub to the end of the timeline, and add that second keyframe. By default, I have it under Bezier, so it's going to ease in and ease out on those keyframes, but you can right click and just change the interpolation if you want to. And there you go. So now we can see that the camera is nicely animating. I'm going to also add depth of field. So let's just enable that setting in the render settings and hit enable DOF. And I'm just going to tweak a few of the camera settings here. I'm just using the focus parameter here in order to select the focus point of the camera. You just have to make sure that the camera layer is selected in the stage layer. Cool, so that looks pretty good. The next step is we're going to be rendering out the image sequence. So under the rendering tab, let's go to movie, capture, and the settings are pretty basic. I'm just going to leave everything mainly to the defaults. So everything from my start to end point is set right. I want it 1920 by 1080, 24 frames per second. I just want to switch the RTX to RTX path traced. Make sure that my samples are set up to 164. And there we go. So I'm just going to set my export path, and I'm going to change it here to an EXR versus a PNG, just for that extra bit depth, and done. So let's hit capture the sequence, and now it's going to go and export that image sequence onto my disk. So once that image sequence is complete, all I did was I brought it into After Effects, added a bit of grain, a bit of color correction, and that was it. So I highly recommend checking out Omniverse Create. It's free to use, and I believe the rest of the tools in their collection is free to use as well. And yeah, if you're interested in real-time rendering, it's definitely worth checking out.